are you guys tonight? All right. Going through a lot of changes right now. We have a very interesting night tonight ahead of us. We have a double panel. So we're going to be discussing two very big subjects tonight. We have the heat is on, THC DUI bill. And we've been fighting this bill for a long time, and it seems to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So tonight we have some experts here to discuss the THC DUI bill with us. We have Mike Elliott. Of course, you know him from the medical marijuana industry group. We have Dan Rees, Professor Dan Rees from CU Denver, here to discuss blood levels. We have the Department of Transportation here tonight. That is going to be awesome. We really want to thank you guys for coming. And we have Sean McAllister. Right, and we know that whatever you say is going to be really good.
All right, so today I've also been told I should be brief. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes. I'm going to try not to bore you. I want to talk about a study I did with Mark Anderson. It was just released. It's available actually on my website, my ISA website. I can give you the address later. So in this study, we looked at the effect of per se drug driving laws on traffic fatalities. Currently, there are 11 states that have passed zero tolerance per se laws. And what those laws say is if you have any controlled substance in your system, you're automatically considered impaired. In addition to these 11 states, there's 5 other states that have set non-zero thresholds for controlled substances. So for instance, 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter of blood. That would be a non-zero threshold. So our study looks at the relationship between these laws and traffic fatalities. Here are the states that have passed these laws. Like I said, there's 16 states. The dates each state passed the law are next to the state. The first state was Arizona in 1990. The last state was Washington, just this past election. Our data come from FARS. It's a national census of all traffic fatalities, all 50 states, for the years 1990 through 2010. And then here's the good stuff. Here are the graphs. So on the left-hand axis are fatalities per 100,000 people. On the bottom axis, you've got year. That solid line is when the when the per se drug driving law was passed. This is Illinois, so it was passed in 1997. And what you're looking for is a break in the trend. So I want you to look at that graph, look at that line, and see if you can see a break in the trend right when that law was passed. Do you see anything? All right, that's Illinois. How about Iowa? Do you see a break in the trend? Yeah, but it's going in the wrong direction, right? If these laws work, you would expect traffic fatalities to go down. It looks like traffic fatalities actually go up. All right, that's Iowa. There's Georgia. Do you see a break in the trend? Maybe. If you squint, there might be a break in the trend. There's Ohio. Again, not clear that anything is going on. So this is where it gets boring, right? I could go through all 15 states. You guys would hate me. Chloe would hate me. I'm not going to do that. Let me try to sum up. Rather than going through each state one at a time, what do? Well, we run a regression. And the great thing about a regression is it takes into account other things that are going on, so economic conditions, other policies, trends. Run that regression, and here are the results. So this is the association between adopting a per se law and traffic fatalities. So it shows you what happens when the law changes, what happens to the change in traffic fatalities. And these are, you can interpret these coefficients as percent changes. And I want you to notice just a couple of things. First of all, 2 out of 3 of these coefficients are positive. They're not negative. All right? Negative would mean these laws are effective. Positive means it's actually the opposite direction. That's the first thing. The second thing, these are really small numbers, right? So 0.008 is 0.8%, a 0.8% increase. 1.4% increase, and then a 0.4% decrease. The third thing I want you to notice is, or the third thing I want to tell you is, they're all statistically insignificant. In other words, we can't reject the hypothesis that the true effect is zero. There's nothing going on here. We cut the data a million different ways. We looked at traffic fatalities at night, traffic fatalities during the weekend, traffic fatalities among young people, traffic fatalities among young women, traffic fatalities among young men. We cut it all the ways we could possibly think of, and we just kept on getting 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. There's really nothing there. All right. So what do we conclude? And I think I got in under 10 minutes. What do we conclude? There's nothing there. These laws, the very law that Colorado is now debating, these laws have absolutely no effect that we can see as they're currently implemented. They have absolutely no effect that we can see on traffic fatalities. That's it. Thanks.
So I think the question I have for the professor, though, is there a bias if you were to come out with bad information for us? Is that what we would have seen tonight? Talk to me about. I just want to know that you know, are you a neutral party in this?
Is my mic on? It is. Am I neutral? Yeah, I think so. Am I objective? I think so. Look, the study that I have back here, this was completed about a year ago. I gave a presentation. Where was that presentation, Mike?
Are you talking about the DUI task force? Or
yeah,
what?
to the DUI task force about a year ago. And one of the things that kept on coming up was, well, it's not peer reviewed. You know, how can we trust it if it's not peer reviewed? And I told them, look, you're right, it's preliminary, it's under review. The truth is it takes a long time for these studies to actually get accepted for publication. And I can tell you, this study is now accepted for publication. So it went through the review process, which of course is some, how shall I put it, certification that it's objective. And it's going to come out actually in April in the Journal of Law and Economics, which is a very prestigious journal out of Chicago. So I think this is going to make a real splash when it's actually published. But I was happy to be able to present the results, the preliminary results, before actual publication.
So that study showed that when states pass medical marijuana laws, traffic fatalities go down on average about 9%.
Yeah, about 9%, somewhere between 8 and 11% actually.
What was the explanation for that you saw?
So what we found was that traffic fatalities fall, and what we found specifically was traffic fatalities involving alcohol fell by actually on the order of, what's the number? Something like 13%. So what it looks as though is going on, we also found that alcohol consumption by young adults fell, and fell substantially. Binge drinking in particular went down. So what we think is going on is that young adults between the ages of, say, 20 and 40, I'm old, so that's still young for me, young adults between the ages of 20 and 40 are drinking less, smoking more, and making our roads safer as a result. Now, we're very careful to say that we're not endorsing driving while under the influence of marijuana. But it's very clear that driving under the influence of alcohol is incredibly dangerous. And so anything you can do to reduce that makes the roads safer.
Did you think that there was anything to the argument that maybe people who are using medical marijuana or using marijuana are staying home, and so they're not actually getting on the, like there might actually be less impaired driving even though marijuana still impairs your driving, but maybe people aren't driving as much?
Absolutely. So we talk about this in the paper. That's a really good point. And there's no way, we just don't have the data to be able to investigate this. So we can't tell. But it's absolutely possible that all that's going on is instead of drinking at a bar or at a restaurant and driving home, what people are doing is they're just staying home and smoking marijuana. That's absolutely possible. I would say it's likely, but I just can't test it.
I just want to ask, I mean, I think what the other side would say is that you're saying there's a causation here, and a lot of the lines you showed show that fatalities have been going down. The CDOT people have told us that a lot of that is more about engineering of highways, how there's safer highways now. I mean, I totally support what you're saying, but isn't what the other side would say as well? It's not that the change in marijuana laws has reduced fatalities. It's other factors. It's safer cars, more airbags. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, sure. So again, what you're looking for in these graphs is a break in the trend. It's very easy to control for the trend. Clearly, what you're talking about is fatalities are trending downwards, and everyone knows that. So if the laws are effective, you'd look for a break in that trend. So let me show you the graphs for, so those were, of course, no trend break, right? These were for the per se laws. Now let me show you for, this is traffic fatalities and medical marijuana laws, the same setup. So the vertical line is when the state passes the medical marijuana law. Before the vertical line, you can see the two trend lines are pretty much the same, right? And then, oh, sorry, this is for teenagers, nothing for teenagers. Here we go, young adults. Here's for young adults. Before the zero, before the vertical line, the trends are pretty much the same. Then after the vertical line, the trends diverge. And that's what you're looking for, a break in the trend. So that's the answer.
Thank you. So, Mike, do you want to give a explanation on basically a summary of the Colorado DUID debate that we're facing now?
So to sum it up, a group called the Colorado Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice, back in 2010, they endorsed a 5 nanogram per se DUID law. They have legislators associated with their group. They're actually formed by the governor's office, and it's a number of law enforcement and DAs and then other stakeholders. So anyway, they pushed that forward, and it went to the state legislature, and it ended up, the legislative session is from January to May, and basically the day before the end of session in May of 2000, this is 11, that bill did not pass, ended up being defeated, and so the CCJJ, they came back and created the marijuana DUID work group as part of the CCJJ. Now, myself and Sean McAllister down there, we were both 2 voting members of that 8-member working group. I'll tell you that, well, we were the 2 people that came in with, a pro-marijuana slant, I guess. The other 6 were not. But after a couple months of meeting and about 10 meetings and interviewing most of the most prestigious international and national experts on DUID, we came to a conclusion, and there was 4 things that we had a consensus recommendation about, is that if we're going to solve the DUID problem, we need more public education, more enforcement of the current law, more data collection and sharing amongst the governmental agencies, and more research needs to be done because we have some big questions that are outstanding. The 5 nanogram per se was brought up again, but it really got split on a 4-4 vote about whether that was going to be supported. So to sum it up, the conclusion was the CCJJ did not endorse it that year, but Senator King, Steve King from Grand Junction, he pushed forward anyway. He introduced it himself, and so that was January 2012. He brought the bill back, and then it died. Really, it died behind the civil unions bill when the Speaker of the House, Frank McNulty, killed the civil unions bill and about 30 other bills. So it died there. But then the governor decided to bring it back for the special session, which happened immediately after the regular session. This is late May of this last year, 2012. And there it died on a 17-17 vote in the state Senate. So that's the 3rd time it's died. It actually died a 4th time, too, which many people don't actually know about, but it didn't get as much media attention. But Senator King brought it back, and there's this year-long transportation committee. It's an interim transportation committee at the state legislature that meets all year. And he brought it back to them, and they passed it 10-6, but it had to go to the Legislative Council Committee for a final passage, and it died there. I think it was a 9-9 votes. Just about as close as you could get. So it died there. So that's the 4th time that this 5 nanogram per se bill has died. Meanwhile, though, the CCJJ brought the marijuana DUID work group back. This is kind of August of 2012. And that DUID work group didn't meet nearly as many times. It only met twice. And really kind of, in my opinion, gave kind of a rubber stamp to the 5 nanogram per se bill. But to get to the conclusion here, it went to the full CCJJ for a vote, and it looked like it wasn't going to pass. So instead of doing per se, they quickly changed it to permissible inference. That passed, and hence that is the bill that Senator King and I believe the other sponsors are Representative Rhonda Fields and Mark Waller, Representative Mark Waller as well. So they've brought the 5 nanogram permissible inference bill back. It is here. It's no longer per se. And hence us needing a conversation, though, because this is a confusing bill. And I guess I've been talking enough, so I'll pass it off to Sean. Sean, would you be interested in maybe explaining the difference between the two, and then we can argue about the merits?
Anyways, no, I do want to talk about the difference between permissible inference and per se, but I also want to make sure everybody understands what to do at the roadside. So maybe I'll start with Mike's question and then get to that later. But yeah, what they're trying to do is backdoor this thing this year. So they first said, okay, if you're over this limit, you are convicted. There is no debate. The only debate is whether you were over that limit. So that's what a per se standard is. That's what we have for alcohol. 0.08 is per se. If you come back over that level and you go to trial, again, unless you have a great attorney like me who can undermine the test result and somehow show it was faulty in some way, which is very hard to do, the jury will be told, if you're over that level, you were driving impaired, no ifs, ands, or buts, no excuses at all. That's per se. That's what's failed several years in a row. Permissible inference means basically they shift the burden of proof. So in this country, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. But with this idea, they would say, you will be presumed impaired if you are over 5 nanograms. But you can put evidence out there to try to rebut that, rebuttable presumption. So you will be able to present evidence. It'll cost you thousands of dollars to put an expert on the stand to explain to a jury that these numbers aren't real and you really weren't impaired. And the jury will have to believe you that you've proven yourself innocent. So that's one of my main objections, is that they're shifting the burden of proof to the defendant, turning our justice system upside down based on science that is not valid beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's Mike and I's, I think, talking point on this. And as you talk to legislators or people about, they're going to say, well, why isn't this okay? You can prove you were impaired. Again, in this country, you're presumed innocent. If you're going to change that presumption and presume you're guilty, there should be scientific evidence that's also proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's not what the science shows. And I have a lot of comments about the science if I get more time, but that's basically the difference between per se, you're automatically guilty. Inference means you're presumed guilty, but you can try to rebut that.
Right. Actually, I guess I'll ask you that question, Sean. I mean, what do you think? How much better is permissible inference than per se?
Well, the last thing I said is the problem is that it's better for sure. It's kind of like saying, well, I don't want to compare it to that. I mean, it's maybe like saying you got assaulted, but you at least have one leg left. I mean, I don't know how good that feels, but no, it is better, and that is why many Democrats, remember, we do have a different legislature this year. Both houses are Democratic controlled, but the pressure of Amendment 64, I think they feel a great pressure to do something to address concerns in the moderate community and the Republican community that they're addressing driving stoned, even though it's not a real problem. It is a problem, but it's not like it's been getting bigger in recent years, and there's no indication the existing laws aren't good enough. As everybody knows, they get a 90% conviction rate as it is. But so yes, it is better than per se, and what I would say is that it's going to be very easy for a lot of moderate legislators to justify it by saying, oh, well, someone could certainly still defend themselves. And then the other thing you're going to hear is, well, nobody would be in that position who's really innocent because they would have had to display bad driving, they would have failed a roadside test. And this kind of bleeds into some of the other things I wanted to talk about tonight. But, there's a very easy example when you talk to legislators or opinion makers or news media people. The example is, You can get pulled over for speeding. That doesn't suggest you necessarily were a dangerous driver. You can get pulled over for a cracked windshield. Okay, so somebody gets pulled over for speeding or cracked windshield. The officer smells marijuana in the car, not smoked marijuana, just marijuana, but probably that smelling that marijuana alone is a reason to have the officer ask you, will you do a roadside exam? And most people make the critical mistake of saying, oh yeah, I smoked 3 hours ago. First of all, you've just put yourself in the target zone of impairment. Most experts would say you're impaired 1 to 2 hours, some would say 1 to 4 hours, but most people make that mistake of admitting recent use. So, but even if you said, I smoked 8 hours ago, which clearly would be beyond the realm of impairment, by having marijuana smell in your car, admitting to smoking, they're going to pull you out of the car, and then you're going to make the next mistake of actually taking a test that you cannot pass, which is the roadside exam. So people need to understand you do not have to take the roadside exam. There is no penalty to you. You will not lose your license. You will not go to, you will not automatically be convicted of anything. My advice is you don't take the roadside exam, but then they probably will tell you, well, if you don't do that, we're going to arrest you. That's an uncomfortable position, but the bottom line is you shouldn't do it.
Okay, so we have Glenn Davis here from the Department of Transportation, which is huge, and we want to thank you for coming. We also have Leslie Chase with us. From the Department of Transportation as well. Since Glenn's appointment in 2004, he has coordinated and integrated programs that foster federal and statewide partnerships to meet CDOT's mission, goals, and objectives for impaired driving enforcement programs and the Office of Transportation Safety. Prior to CDOT, Glenn served in the Littleton Police Department for 22 years in Patrol, Community Services, Drug Task Force, and Detective Division. Glenn has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Columbia College of Missouri and a master's degree in education from Colorado State University. Thank you for being here tonight. Leslie Chase has worked for the state of Colorado for 19 years. 10 years with the Colorado State Patrol as the project manager for the Alive at 25 defensive driving program for young drivers. 9 years with the Colorado Department of Transportation. 2 years as the Maintenance Training Academy Director, and the past 7 years as a project manager in the fields of impaired driving and occupant protection. She's a statewide high visibility law enforcement coordinator that coordinates over 135 law enforcement agencies, including the Colorado State Patrol and DUI overtime efforts, and the Click It or Ticket Seatbelt Enforcement Campaign. I want to thank you for being here tonight too, Leslie. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you see with this program and where you see it going.
And we'd like to talk to you about what Heat Is On is. And this comes right off our website, but it's a high visibility. And by high visibility, that means public relations, media, things like that. And it combines focused enforcement with strong public awareness campaigns during 12 yearly enforcement periods. With the money we get, we also not only do public relations, but we use that money to give grants to law enforcement agencies, both state and local, to conduct focused highway impaired driving enforcements by using our funding sources. And then our public relations office uses the federal funds for media relations. Okay? Now, we do this because we have some duties and responsibilities. CDOT gets a lot of federal funding, and to get the federal funding, some of it is automatic. There's other funding that you have to apply for, and you apply for this federal funding by meeting certain criteria. And the money we use for the Heat Is On campaign is what's called 410 funding. It's alcohol and impaired driving funding. And one of the criteria that we do to get this funding is that we have to show NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that we have a statewide program that reaches the majority of the state to conduct a series of high visibility law enforcement campaigns using checkpoints or saturation patrols. Colorado is a state that can use DUI checkpoints, and when we do these too, they're based on problem identification. We find the areas of the state that have are overrepresented by traffic fatalities, alcohol related, impaired driving related, and crashes, and we work with those agencies to do enforcement. And the enforcement we also do during specified times. The state also gets state money. There's a program called LEAF, Law Enforcement Assistance Fund. Anybody who is convicted of an impaired driving offense pays into the fund, and by the time that the lab gets their part of it, CDOT gets a about $500,000 to do enforcement there. And we also have another fund from state sources that's a high visibility drunk driving enforcement. People that are suspended and reinstate their license, a portion that comes to CDOT, and that we use to do high visibility enforcement, different campaigns. Okay? And the funding amounts, well, we dedicate about $3.5 million to our impaired driving enforcement. And it's that enforcement's also the high visibility element of it too, which is the public relations. The federal money, about 29% of my budget goes directly to the public relations office for Heat Is On. If you see the commercials, NHTSA does a lot of them where the guy's in disguise and the people are walking by, and then they used to do the ones where there was a car and they'd open the door and there'd be wine or liquor would pull out. That's where that money goes. A lot of them are on Fox. Our Fox network, our biggest population that we're trying to reach is males, like 21 to 34. Our funding source for Leaf is about $450,000, and then our funding source that we get from the high visibility drunk driving is $1,500,000. So that collectively is what funds our Heat Is On. As far as the events that we do, Leslie, I'm going to let you expound on these.
Is this on? Yeah, it is. Currently, we have 12 enforcement campaigns, and they're listed here back behind me. 4 of those campaigns are required that we do those. That would be St. Patrick's, Memorial, 4th of July, and Labor Day. The rest of those campaigns are additional campaigns that we do. On average, we have about 93 law enforcement agencies that participate in each one of these, plus 20 troop offices within the Colorado State Patrol. So we have a lot of law enforcement out there, and the numbers that you see down at the bottom,
Could you hit the
there are no numbers, are there?
There we go. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah. So the numbers you will see will be the number of arrests that are made on each one of those campaigns. In the lower, you guys can't see them, but in the lower left-hand corner, I can give you an example. Let's just pick high school HOE, which would be for 2009. There were, statewide, we had over 31,000 DUI arrests. With the agencies that participate in our high visibility, of those agencies, there was approximately over 8,000 arrests. So as you can see, there's 2 campaigns up there that seem to bring in a lot of DUIs, and that would be Labor Day, and if you can believe it, it's high school proms. So, yeah. So overall, we have had, using just the agencies that are using our money. For 2009, we had 25% of our agencies made the most arrests. In 2010, 34% of the agencies that use this overtime money, that was the combined arrest. And in 2011, there was 34% of the agencies that made a portion of all the DUI arrests.
This chart I made looked a lot better when I made it, but because I noticed on the very top that middle bar should be a lot longer. But what we're showing is our overall fatality environment, and our biggest challenge in the state is unrestrained fatalities and alcohol-related fatalities. We had, in 2007, we had 554 fatalities for the state, and in 5 years later, we're at 447, so that's a drop of 107. But we don't lose sight in our office that those are people, those are humans, they have families. I started law enforcement August 1st, 1979. I remember when there was no standard field sobriety testing. I remember when there was no roadside exam. I remember when there was no portable breath testers. In 1981, this state had 547 alcohol-related fatalities. The state didn't even have 3 million people yet. So here the state is with like about 5.5 million people, and we're down to that amount. But you can see it's still pretty consistent with the amount of alcohol-related fatalities and restrained.
Great, and a quick question for Glenn and Leslie. Why has it been that you all have been willing to partner with people in the medical marijuana industry, and maybe what are some of the challenges in doing so?
What is the commitment we have?
No. What was your vision maybe of doing it?
My vision, Do you mind if I do the vision, Leslie?
Sure.
Okay. My vision is that as medical marijuana became more prevalent, as the environment in the state changed, as the law changed, that CDOT has to stay in sync with what's going on and not being resistive. And I was fortunate with my PR lady who you'd met, Heather, who's left. She had the same vision too. That I don't look at it as a problem either. I look at it as a challenge. If there's anywhere we can make people aware of what our mission is, I think that we have more ways to partner. I think we have more things in common than we do not in common. And it's finding those things in common and working with them. So I'm looking at it as the state changes, and how can we make our program better? Some of the stuff that Sean said, I remember when roadsides first came out. I remember that, and people thought it was voodoo. The officers thought, well, how the guy's eyes are moving, but it progressed. Maybe there is an opportunity to look at it and make it better. Make it better not only for law enforcement, but make it also better for the people being tested. I believe the roadsides, if properly administered, are very accurate. However, I don't know if they're administered accurately in every situation. There's 14,000 law enforcement in this state. I also would like it to see maybe if there's better training environments we can do. I don't ever want to see anybody arrested that should not be arrested, because if that breaks down the arresting, the whole system just breaks down. So I look at it as opportunities, Michael.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yes. Let's give him a round of applause on that one. With education, we could do so much. Thank you so much, Mike, for bringing everybody here that you've built these relationships with and everything that you've done for this industry with these laws. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're going to do a quick intermission, and then we're going to be back with the new panel for the task force update for the regulated rules.